Virginia State Police investigating a death at a state-run mental hospital. It happened at Central State Hospital in Dinwiddie, but as our senior reporter Wayne Koval has learned, it involved a person who was in the custody of Henrico County deputies. Wayne just spoke with the Henrico sheriff. He joins us now here in the studio with more. Wayne?
Bill, the death of 28-year-old Irvo Otieno now being investigated by Virginia State Police. I learned Otieno was taken to Central State Hospital Monday afternoon due to a mental health crisis. Henrico County Sheriff Alyssa Gregory tells me standard protocol for transport by Henrico Sheriff's deputies is the prisoner has on handcuffs and shackles. Just after arriving at the forensics unit at Central State is when something happened. Virginia State Police tell me Otieno became combative during the intake process. He was restrained and later died. Dinwiddie County paramedics were called to the scene but could not revive Otieno. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Henrico County Sheriff Alyssa Gregory says the death has shook her and her staff to the core. The sheriff says while state police are handling the investigation at Central State, her department went over everything that happened before the deputies left with Otieno.
We have investigated everything up until the transport, and there are no issues with any of their actions. They handle things properly, and from my personal point of view, they went above and beyond.
Sheriff Gregory tells me the 4 deputies who did the transport are still on duty. Dinwiddie County Commonwealth's attorney Ann Baskerville confirms the Virginia State Police are investigating, and the Department of Behavioral Health, which oversees Central State Hospital, tells me they are cooperating with the investigation, and their thoughts and prayers are with the Otieno's family during this difficult time.
First, we have breaking news out of Henrico, where a group of sheriff's deputies have been arrested in connection to the death of an inmate. Thanks for joining us for the news at 5. I'm Julie Bragg.
And I'm Leland Pender. We have team coverage this evening. Our Melissa Hippolyte goes in depth on the timeline of last week's incident. But first, let's head out to our senior reporter, Wayne Koval. He has the latest on these arrests. Wayne?
Leland, 7 Henrico County Sheriff's deputies were arrested this morning for their alleged involvement in the death of an inmate that they had transported to Central State Hospital for a mental health issue. All 7 deputies charged with 1 count of second-degree murder in the death of 28-year-old Irvo Otieno. Their arrests come after a week-long investigation by the Virginia State Police. On March 6th, Henrico County Sheriff's deputies arrived at Central State Hospital at 3:58 in the afternoon to admit Otieno as a patient. At 7:28 that evening, Virginia State Police called for a death investigation. Investigators were told Otieno became combative during the admission process, had to be restrained, and died during the intake process. Henrico County Sheriff Alyssa Gregory told me last week she was aware of 4 deputies who transported Otieno to Central State and that all 4 were still on the job. Tuesday afternoon, in a statement to CBS 6, Sheriff Gregory said the 7 deputies have been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the Commonwealth's case. Sheriff Gregory also says her office is cooperating with the state police investigation and her department is conducting their own independent review of what happened. This afternoon, Dinwiddie Commonwealth Attorney Ann Baskerville sat down with me saying this case has moved quickly to be transparent about what happened and respectful of the family for the loss they have suffered. Baskerville also said the incident is a horrible miscarriage of justice by individuals and institutions. Those arrested are 57-year-old Randy Boyer, 37-year-old Dwayne Bramble, 45-year-old Jermaine Branch, 43-year-old Bradley Diss, 50-year-old Tabitha Levere, 48-year-old Brandon Rogers, and 30-year-old Kyle Sanders. The family of Irvo Otieno met with the Dinwiddie Commonwealth's attorney for about an hour this afternoon, going over everything that has happened. Now, the state medical examiner's office still working to determine the exact cause of death. All 7 deputies are being held without bond. Coming up new at 6, where the charges go next for review. In Henrico County, Wayne Koval, CBS 6 News.
All right, thanks so much, Wayne. So how did Otieno end up in police custody and what led to his death? Melissa Hippolyte is live now in the studio going in depth there and has more on the timeline. Melissa.
Well, Leland, let me preface this by saying that everything I'm about to tell you comes from Henrico Police, the Henrico Sheriff's Office, Virginia State Police, and the Dinwiddie County Commonwealth's Attorney. Now, on Friday, March 3rd, Henrico Police say they responded to a possible burglary in the Three Chop District and approached a potential suspect, Irvo Otieno. Police say based on their interaction and observation of Otieno, HPD placed him under an emergency custody order. They say members of the county's crisis intervention team were also on the scene. Officers took Otieno to an area hospital for evaluation, and according to Henrico Police, Otieno became physically aggressive toward officers who arrested him and transported him to the Ward Services Unit at Henrico Jail West. He was charged with the following: assault on a law enforcement officer, disorderly conduct in a hospital, and vandalism. Now, fast forward to Monday, March 6th. That's when the Henrico County Sheriff's Office transported Otieno to Central State Hospital due to a mental health crisis to admit him as a patient. They arrived at 3:58 p.m. Henrico Sheriff Alyssa Gregory previously told us it is standard protocol to place an inmate in handcuffs and shackles during a transport. Gregory said that just after arriving at the forensics unit at Central State, something happened, and Dinwiddie County paramedics were called to the scene at 4:30. A state police spokesperson said it was reported that Otieno became combative during intake. He was restrained and later died at the scene. VSP was called to investigate at 7:28 p.m. Now, when we originally spoke with Sheriff Gregory, she said her department went over everything that happened before the deputies left to transport Otieno. Now, here is what she told us on March 6th.
We have investigated everything up until the transport, and there are no issues with any of their actions. They handle things properly, and from my personal point of view, they went above and beyond.
Now, CBS 6 continues to work to find out what happened from the time the transport left Henrico until the time paramedics were called to Central State. The cases against the 7 deputies are scheduled to be presented to the grand jury next Tuesday.
2 of the 7 Henrico deputies charged with second-degree murder in the death of an inmate who died while in custody are now out on bond.
Attorneys reveal what they say a videotape shows in the moments leading up to the death of an inmate as the deputies charged in his death appear in court.
Well, I think it's very important that we see that footage as soon as possible. It's certainly far too soon to point fingers at any individual.
And we take a look at what happens when somebody experiencing a mental health crisis is taken by police under an emergency custody order to the hospital. Why might they be taken to the jail from there?
Senator Creed Deeds asking for better facilities and better training.
It's so important that before we make too many judgments, we found out exactly what happened. To me, this story speaks to the urgency of getting crisis intervention training for 100% of our law enforcement officers.
The CBS 6 News at 6 starts right now.
We have complete in-depth coverage on that story for you tonight. Good evening. I'm Janine Samuels.
And I'm Bill Fitzgerald, anchoring our coverage live from Henrico County Jail West, where those deputies worked. It's also where Irvo Otieno was taken into custody by officers as a potential burglary suspect on March 3rd. Then, March 6th, after observing him, those officers put Otieno under an emergency custody order and took him to Central State Hospital for evaluation. They say he became combative and was brought to a local jail where he later died during the intake process. The sheriff's deputies involved in the incident were in court today on second-degree murder charges. We start our team coverage with senior reporter Wayne Koval to break down what happened inside the courtroom today and the evidence being considered. Some of the details Wayne learned you might find disturbing. Wayne?
Well, Bill, as family members of the jail deputies walked out of Dinwiddie Courthouse this morning after seeing their loved ones on a courtroom video screen, 2 of those 7 deputies in jail learned that they had made bond and would be getting out from behind bars. The arraignment also brought out more details about what had happened.
The Commonwealth Attorney has taken a very aggressive position here.
7 Henrico County Sheriff's deputies, each facing a second-degree murder charge, had their first appearance in court Wednesday morning. Carrie Bowen represents Deputy Jermaine Branch.
Our client has been there for 24 years.
Judge Joseph Teefee granted Deputy Jermaine Branch and Deputy Bradley Deasy bond. But during the arraignment process, more details about what happened to 28-year-old Irvo Otieno, both at the Henrico County Jail and Central State Hospital, came out. Commonwealth's attorney Ann Baskerville said the preliminary cause of death is asphyxiation.
He was held down on the ground, prone on the ground, for 12 minutes by all 7 of our defendants charged here, including this one. So much so that they smothered him, and they smothered him to death.
Baskerville says the state medical examiner will now need to view 2 videotapes, one at Henrico County Jail, which she says shows a naked Otieno being tackled and struck by 5 deputies, and the 12-minute video from Central State Hospital, where Otieno had his hands handcuffed in front of him with shackles on his feet, and Baskerville says where 7 sheriff's deputies had Otieno on the ground. Baskerville says there is also concern about 2 injections Otieno received at Central State Hospital during or after the altercation.
He stopped moving and probably died before the injection was given.
Bowen says some deputies believe the interjections contributed to Oteneo's death.
I think that's what some of these people that are charged believe, but I have not talked to the staff at Central State that saw that. At least the way it was told to me was once the injections, 2 injections, and once that was administered, there was no more. I mean, he was not responsive even.
Defense attorney Edward Nickel represents Deputy Bradley Deasy, told me he was glad Deasy made bail. Nickel also tells me he believes the charges were made prematurely and will now work to clear Deasy's name.
It is extremely clear and extremely alarming.
During the altercation at Central State Hospital, Commonwealth's attorney Ann Baskerville tells me there were Central State employees watching, and some did join in. More charges may be coming soon. Bill?
Thank you, Wayne. And as for the 2 deputies that were granted bond, our Tyler Lane was outside Meherrin River Regional Jail in Brunswick County when they were released. He's live now with those details tonight. Tyler?
And Bill, we were the only news crew here at the jail today when those 2 deputies were released on bond right here through these doors behind me. Now, we asked both of those men for a response to the claims against them, but neither spoke with us. Henrico County deputies Jermaine Branch and Bradley Deasy were held here at the Meherrin River Regional Jail in Brunswick County after being charged with second-degree murder and the death of Irvo Otieno. Around 2:15 Wednesday afternoon, they were both released on bond, with people waiting to pick them up. Branch was first to be released, and he was covered with a scarf as we approached with our camera. Is there anything that you want to say about the charges against you? Can you tell us what happened leading up to Oteneo's death?
Can you respect my family and move?
Is there a message that you want to say to the victim's family? We gave Branch a final opportunity to respond, but he got into the car without making a comment. Less than 10 minutes later, Deasy was also released through what appears to be a garage door of the facility. He was shielded by a jacket as we approached. Mr. Deasy, is there anything you want to say about the charges against you? Can you tell us what happened leading up to Otieno's death? Do you have a message for the victim's family? We just want to give you an opportunity to respond to the charges. Deasy entered a vehicle and left the jail without making a comment. Now, the 5 other deputies that are charged in this incident are still being held in custody right here at the Meherrin River Regional Jail in Brunswick County. And Bill, I'll go ahead and send it back to you.
All right, thank you, Tyler. State Senator Creed Deeds, a longtime advocate for the improvement of Central State Hospital specifically and behavioral health resources there, is speaking out about the death of Irvo Otieno, who was admitted there last week. Our Elizabeth Holmes spoke with Deeds today.
Senator Deeds says he immediately began reaching out to law enforcement and behavioral health leaders in the area to figure out what may have happened at Central State and where things went wrong. He says even though the current conditions of the hospital are not ideal, he does not think they may have contributed to Otieno's death.
I think the family and the community deserves answers. We need to figure out exactly what happened, why it happened.
Senator Creed Deeds sharing concerns over what happened at Central State Hospital, leading to the death of 28-year-old Irvo Otieno, a mental health patient transported there March 6th. The story is personal to the senator. His son, who dealt with mental health issues, brutally stabbed him, then died by suicide in 2013.
Not be so crisis-driven, that we try to keep a focus on this and keep a face on the problems.
When we interviewed Creed Deeds back in 2018, he noted the age and condition of the hospital structure, saying it was, quote, held together by duct tape. Years later, despite little improvement, he says the employees are doing the best they can.
I don't know if the current condition of Central State Hospital can bear any of the blame for what happened to this young man.
The incident, he says, highlights a need for training.
To me, this story speaks to the urgency of getting crisis intervention training for 100% of our law enforcement officers, because so often when they are called out to confront the public, somebody in the public, there's a mental health implication, and you just need the tools that crisis intervention training provides.
Senator Deeds says construction for a new Central State Hospital is set to be completed in 2026. He said he hopes this incident and any investigation does not delay that opening date. In the studio, I'm Elizabeth Holmes, CBS 6 News.
And so we're asking questions about why Mr. Otieno was taken to a hospital originally to receive treatment for his mental health crisis, but then arrested and transported to the Henrico jail. Our Melissa Hippolyte joins us now from the studio with insights from two experts. Melissa?
Well, Bill, I talked to a psychiatrist and former law enforcement officer about what the process is when someone is experiencing a mental health crisis and is taken to the hospital under an emergency custody order, and why they might end up in jail. When Henrico police responded to a home on Fordson Road at 11:34 a.m. on March 3rd for a possible burglary call, they identified Irvo Otieno as a potential suspect. A spokesperson for the police department said officers used their crisis intervention training and identified that the person was experiencing a mental health crisis. So they issued an emergency custody order and transported him to the crisis receiving center at Henrico Doctors Hospital. Once there, Otieno would have been met by the hospital's psych team and medical team, according to Dr. Martin Buxton, the former chief of psychiatry at Chippenham and Johnston Willis hospitals.
Somebody would try to calm him, talk him down.
Buxton, who is unconnected to this case, says that if that didn't work and the individual was combative, the staff would have restrained them.
But if somebody was violent and you could not slow them down, they're tearing up the emergency room, you would restrain them and try to medicate them.
In the case of Otieno, Henrico police say he became physically assaultive toward officers at the hospital, so they arrested him and transported him to the Henrico County Jail, where he was charged with assault on a law enforcement officer, disorderly conduct in a hospital, and vandalism.
Would you expect in a situation like what I've described that the staff would have at least tried to put a drug in them that ultimately would have calmed them?
No question.
We don't know if the hospital staff did or did not give or attempt to give a calming medication. Mark Bong, who used to work in law enforcement and is currently an attorney in Henrico who often represents police officers, says he wonders why the officers decided the best course of action was to take Otieno to the jail.
Someone who is in a hospital setting who then gets placed in a jail setting is probably getting insufficient treatment, especially on the weekend. The availability of medication and treatment are going to be greatly reduced in a jail environment than they would be in a hospital environment.
Jails are clearly not the optimal place for a psychiatric patient. They could be re-traumatized, they could be stirred up, the noise, the lack of capacity to sleep, all those things go against mental health.
Buxton says it's possible there were no psych beds available at Henrico Doctors or other hospitals.
Was there a bed at Forest? If not, were they trying to get another bed in town and they couldn't find one because Central State used to be the designated backup, and whether Central State had a bed. They may have decided they couldn't manage them there, or they didn't have a bed there, and there was no psychiatric bed available in town. I mean, that happens.
Lots of questions still. We have asked a variety of entities in Henrico County, including the police and mental health services, about what exactly happened in this situation, and we are still waiting to hear back. Bill?
Thank you, Melissa. And CBS 6 will continue to follow this story as it develops. You can watch our updates and all of our in-depth coverage just by downloading the free CBS 6 News app.
Well, Ivo's mother and brother were composed yet tearful minutes after watching video of Ivo's last moments. Now they say they want justice. Broken. That's how this family feels after watching their loved one's death.
My son was treated like a dog, worse than a dog.
What I saw, I witnessed a homicide.
Irvo Otieno's mother and brother spoke to the media Thursday, minutes after watching two videos at the Dinwiddie Commonwealth's Attorney's Office. One of Irvo in the Henrico jail, the other of his time inside Central State Hospital.
What I saw today was heartbreaking.
At the Henrico jail, they say Irvo was naked in his cell with feces on the ground and handcuffed when 5 deputies rushed into the cell to carry him out.
He's carried out by the arms and legs, almost upside down, being carried like an animal.
Once inside Central State, the attorneys say Irvo was seated in a chair with handcuffs and leg restraints and was not resisting. They say deputies pushed him to the ground where he lay face down when 7 deputies and 3 Central State employees started pushing down on him with force. They say at least 2 deputies put their knee on Ivo's neck. It lasted 11 minutes.
The tragic killing of George Floyd. You say, why would any law enforcement officer put a knee on the neck?
Ivo's mom and brother want to know why, especially when the police officers who originally took him into Henrico Doctors Hospital on March 3rd knew he was experiencing a mental health crisis.
The doctor who was treating him personally came out and told me that he was on him and treating him, and he was going to be all right.
But it was there that Henrico police decided to charge Otieno with assaulting an officer, disorderly conduct in a hospital, and vandalism, and transported him to the Henrico jail. Ivo's family doesn't know why.
I don't understand how all systems failed him.
At what point do we consider mental illness a crime?
They say they are now hoping for justice for Irvo and changes to a broken system.
Every single family in America, you are dealing with mental illness in the family. 1 or 2 or 3 people are dealing with mental illness. You should not wake up and feel sick and consider whether or not you should call for help.
The family says they hope the 2 videos will be made available to the public very soon. In Dinwiddie, I'm Melissa Hippolyte for CBS 6. I filed a public records request for body camera footage from the Henrico police officers who responded to Irvo Otieno's home, took him to the hospital, and then charged him and took him to Henrico jail. But Henrico County declined to release it because they say some of the video is part of an ongoing criminal investigation, and some of it contains information of a personal and medical nature that would jeopardize the privacy of an individual. However, we have obtained security video from inside Henrico Jail West, which shows what happened before Otieno was transported to Central State. We want to point out that there are points of this story where you will hear nothing but silence, because that is because we wanted to allow the video to play out in real time. This is video from inside the Henrico County Jail West on Monday, March 6th, when deputies go to Irvo Otieno's cell at just before 2:30 and start the process to transport him to Central State Hospital. The video has no sound, but we can see Otieno through a window on the door. The video shows a deputy first talking to Otieno through a tray slot on the door and then handing Otieno a pair of pants through the slot that Otieno pushes back out. Otieno tries to pull the tray slot door closed and then pushes an orange food tray out. It appears deputies try to grab Otieno's hand through the tray slot to possibly put handcuffs on him. Then it appears a deputy shoots pepper spray through the tray slot twice. After that, it appears 6 deputies rush into the cell. We see one deputy brace his arm on the wall, and he appears to punch downwards multiple times. A wheelchair with straps is brought to the cell but never used. Otieno is then pulled and carried out of the cell. In a second video from the jail Sally Port, which we've blurred portions of, it shows a naked Otieno carried by deputies to the passenger side of a white van. They then carry him to the back of the van, where they appear to try to get him into the van for several minutes. They then carry Otieno to the back seat of an SUV and struggle for a minute to put him in the SUV feet first. Deputies slam the doors closed at 2:57. 13 minutes later, the SUV leaves with lights flashing for Central State. Earlier this month, we asked Henrico Sheriff Alyssa Gregory about her deputies' actions prior to the transport. On March 8th, she defended their actions.
We have investigated everything up until the transport, and there are no issues with any of their actions. They handle things properly, and from my personal point of view, they went above and beyond.
I reached back out today in the wake of the video being released to ask if she stood by her earlier comments, but I haven't heard back. Now, just moments ago, I did hear from Sheriff Gregory. She told me she could not comment due to the ongoing investigation. Now, remember, before he was taken to Jail West, Henrico police officers brought Otieno to Parham Doctors Hospital under an emergency custody order, and he was kept there until officers said he became assaultive. Henrico Commonwealth's attorney Shannon Taylor says she is investigating Otieno's treatment at all of these locations. She has released a new statement which says, in part, my office is working diligently to do a thorough investigation, working to get numerous relevant videos and talking to others involved. Our responsibility is to determine what happened in Henrico, were any laws broken, and if so, who is held accountable. She said, I am committed to ensuring this investigation of these most tragic circumstances where a young man has died will be thorough and complete. His family and all of Henrico deserves no less. I'm Melissa Hippolyte for CBS 6.
10-4-11-26.
The first call to Dinwiddie County 911 about a problem with a person at Central State came in at 4:42 that afternoon.
So the patient is a new admission, so we're still in the admission unit, and then he's very aggressive.
A moment later, the caller tells the dispatcher,
so they're doing a CPR right now, and there's no pulse anymore.
The dispatcher then asks for clarification.
Is the patient aggressive or is he not?
No, he used to be aggressive, right? So they're trying to put him in restraint. Then eventually he's no longer breathing.
A minute after receiving that call, paramedics were on their way. It would be 18 minutes before they arrive at Building 39 on the campus of Central State.
The unit that was responding came from the closest available unit, which happened to be the center of the county that day.
Dinwiddie County is 507 square miles. On Monday, March 6th,
there were 4 ambulances on duty.
1 at Namazine Fire Station, 2 at Dinwiddie Fire Station, and 1 at the McKinney Fire Station. When the 911 call from Central State was received, the closest ambulance was already on a call, as was a second ambulance.
1 was a cardiac arrest and 1 was a motor vehicle accident. So they still received the closest available unit.
Before the paramedics arrive, CPR is in progress.
Dinwiddie 911, where's your emergency?
And another call from Central State to 911.
Ma'am, they're coming, and they're coming as quickly as they can. We have a motor vehicle accident also. They're coming.
This is just totally unacceptable, and y'all know it too. Totally unacceptable.
They're coming.
With the closest available ambulance coming from the center of the county, their drive time,
it's at least 15 minutes. Lights and sirens are great, but they don't necessarily cut a significant amount of time off.
Titmus tells me once on scene, the paramedics did everything they could to revive Irvo Otieno, not leaving the scene for nearly an hour after arriving. I did reach out to the Department of Behavioral Health about medical protocols inside the forensics unit, but have not heard back.